Okay, everybody, I'm just going to check the sound here real quick. In this session, we're going to talk about Soulstice. Make sure you go and download the PDF. Should be, if you're on the website, you should be able to see the sort of aqua button for downloading the new PDF, which consolidates all the old material from back in 2019 into one PDF, plus adds some improvisation material. If you are watching on the website, be sure to go inside the viewing window you're looking at right now and click on Watch on YouTube so you can take part in the chat. The video is blurry. Let me know if that changes. Let's give it a few minutes. Sometimes it takes a second for the camera to go like, oh yeah, that's what I'm looking at. So that could be what's happening. But if that continues to be the case, let me know. So I'm just going to riff here for a minute, verbally, see if things get any better. Because it looks clear over here. I can always pause the stream and check a couple of things. Let me do that. Just don't go anywhere. I'm going to stop streaming for a second. Okay, should be back. Should be focused. Yeah, excellent. Okay, yeah, the camera like got knocked around earlier or yesterday or something, and the autofocus. It's much better when the autofocus is on because the setting is continuous AF, which sounds like something one of my kids would say. So good. All right, so I'm going to play through the tune. Just for anybody who's not familiar, there are short videos going with that accompany this in the library. If you go into the if you go into the contemporary blues tunes and go back to December 2019, which is, oh my gosh, a long time ago, there are short videos to accompany this, but I'll play through the whole tune. Okay, so that more or less is the tune. And yeah, there are some bass moves which I'm going to talk about when we get into the improvisation. But there are also some fills that are covered in the embellished versions 1 and 2. So let me pull up the new tab on screen and we'll get into it. It's a 16-bar blues, and the trick to the tune, wait a second here. The trick to the tune overall, the form, is that the first 8 bars are like a 12-bar, the first 8 bars of a 12-bar blues. It goes from 1 to 4, and then back to 2 bars of 1, and then 2 bars of the 4 chord, and then back to the 1 chord for 2 bars. And then there's instead of going to the 5 chord, it goes to a B section, which is 3 times through this descending C sharp 7 sharp 9, C7, B7 to E. And that happens 3 times. There's the first time the melody goes like this. Second time the melody goes up over the same chords. Third time it repeats the first time. And then the last time it just does the 5 to the C and then back to the B. And so those of you that are fans of turnarounds and chord substitutions, C sharp 7 is the 6th chord. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. C7 is a tritone substitution for F sharp, the 2 chord. So this is going 6, sub 4, 2, B7 is the 5, and then E is the 1. So it's really going 6, 2, 5, 1, except it's using a tritone substitution of C, a tritone away in terms of the root motion from the F sharp, which is the 2. And then just blues licks on top, right? Those are all notes from the E minor pentatonic scale, but the trick, again, is that when you put E blues licks or E minor pentatonic licks over dominant chords in this kind of turnaround, you get all the altered notes. This is sharp 11, this is sharp 9, that's 13 to the 5. So it's getting fancy results from simple information, basically. So the PDF, these are all the original exercises from the first time we went through this. And basically, there's 6 exercises which just kind of break down some of the moves. The first thing is just being able to play these double stops over an E root. And this is a kind of unusual way to play an E7 chord. It's got the top part, it looks just like it looks like a D chord, right? But it's the 7th, the flat 7, and the 9 of E. And then this is Blues 101, right? This is the 5th and the flat 7 of E. So this part's kind of normal, but this is a little more unusual. So the first measure of exercise 1 is just practicing this and getting used to doing that. You're going to play steady bass with the thumb and grab the top 2 notes with middle and ring, and then the next 2 notes with index and middle. So, and then you're going to go down and play this next move, which is basically going from A to E. So it's like passing notes, basically. And that's just a warm up for being able to play that opening phrase, right? But you want to just break it up and just get familiar with it and get used to those rhythms. And then here is the A7 chord, an A9 chord. And once you've done this first exercise, it should be not too bad to go on and do the A. You're going to bring the thumb up to the 5th string. And And then this whole operation just moves up 5 frets to go from E to A, so to transpose the phrase up. So we're going to have, and so the first measure is just doing that same move that we did down here. We had it down here in E, now we got it up here in A. Same fingering with the left hand, same fingering with the right hand, everything the same. And then same idea here, except no open string to work with, but basically going from these passing notes here on the 7th fret to the conclusion of the A chord, which is the 3rd and the 5th. So, and just getting used to doing that with a little half bar with the ring finger. So we're going to come from here, and then moving up and grabbing that again. So just little exercises to break up the coordination. And then here is just some practicing the syncopation with just over a C7 sharp 9 chord. So we're grabbing, this is good practice for what the fingering is on the right hand, thumb, index, and ring spread out over the 5th, 3rd, and 1st string. And then this is the syncopation. So the bass for this exercise is just sitting on the C sharp in the bass on the 5th string. And then here we're going to grab 1, 2, 3, and 4. That's the first measure. So a little syncopation exercise, a pinch, one more pinch, and then the and of 3. So 1, 2, 3, and then bass on beat 4. So you can just play that one measure. And then this measure is a different syncopation. Here we're playing on beat 1 and beat 2, and then playing on the and of 2. So, and then followed by 2 more bass notes. This is a really classic kind of 2-measure syncopation where you've got 3 downbeats and then the and, followed by 2 downbeats and then the and. So put together, these 2 measures sound like this. You can hear that's just like a classic like horn rhythm or whatever. And it's the defining rhythm of the B section of the entire last 8 bars. So this is just practicing that in isolation. It's basically a rudiment, right? It's just working. Nothing's happening over here. We're just grabbing the chord, holding on to it, and then practicing the coordination of the right hand. So it's a good isolation of what's going on rhythmically. Oops. Then we move on to the next page. And here, this is getting the coordination of the descending bass line with the melody on top. So if you follow the bass line, you can see it's going down, C sharp to C to B to E, right? So if you want to do a little horizontal 3-step, break out the bass, just make sure you know what that's doing. You're going to finger it with middle finger, working its way down on the A string because you're going to need the rest of your fingers up here for other stuff. And then on top, here's that pentatonic stuff. Again, you could isolate the melody and just make sure you can play it. You've already done the rhythm on the previous page, right? Look at 1, stop that. 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, 2, and. So the rhythm's already taken care of. So now we're dropping notes into that rhythm. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So great example of how to isolate the rhythm with exercise 3 and then start applying the melody in exercise 4. Now when you put the bass and the melody together, we're not worried about the 3rd string, the inner voice. We're just going to do. So just getting used to putting those two things together once you've practiced the rhythm. Look at where the pinches are. And then we can work on doing the inner voice along with the thumb. And you can see that that's traveling down the third string. Right? So just that's exercise number 5. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and any resemblance to the melody to Lulu's Back in Town, strictly coincidental. And then the last exercise is just practicing that. I wrote it as B minor 7. It's really a B7 sharp 9, but because you don't actually play the third in the bass, this is what happens in measures 10 and 12 and 14, right? You're coming down. So that's a little tricky just to get the right hand doing what you want it to do. Mostly to grab this syncopated framing of the E chord on the and of 2. So you're just practicing grabbing the B minor chord here and then the open B followed by index and ring on the and of 2. And bringing the bass in. Again, that's just a tricky move. And so you might even, think about how you want to do this, whether you want to, that's not how you typically play B minor 7, but it is how you play B7 sharp 9. And if you do that, then index is available, right? And ready to drop in, which is easier than jumping over and down over 2 strings and down a fret. That's harder. So those are some options. Okay, so here is the fundamental tune. The main difference between the fundamental and the embellished are some of the bass moves. The melody doesn't really change that much. But let me play through the embellished, and then we'll talk a little bit about the horizontal 3-step. So here's the fundamental version. Did I say embellished? I meant to say fundamental. Fundamental version of Soulstice. 1, 2, 3. Sorry, it's gotta remember that from the top. 1, 2, 3, and B section. Right, so it's steady bass all the way through, and the bass is, you're playing 4 E's in a row or 4 A's in a row, and then you're dropping in this double stop move on top. And that's basically the tune, and then these these moves which are sort of broken down in the exercises. But if you want to start isolating things, you can walk through and just play the bass, and that will help clarify the form, which is the important thing, is just to have like the form in mind. So again, first 8 bars are like a blues, E, A, E, right? And then here we got this descending thing 3 times in a row and then landing on B. So that's gonna look like this. If we go through the bass, starting on the E, going to the A, and back to the E. And this may seem kind of dumb, but it's important to be able to play those long stretches of, say, 2 bars of an A in the bass without losing track of where you are in the bar or in the form. And then here comes the B section. 3 times going through this. 3rd time, last line. And then 2 measures on B. Or actually, sorry, 1 measure on B. And then the walk down back to E. And then we can look at the melody and just practice that part. And then next line, we've got the A twice. It's really just a riff that's getting moved around. And then we've got the top part. This note in the middle on the 3rd string is really part of both the bass expressing the chord and it's helping to support the melody. So I highlighted the top 3 strings. So those are the melodic figures. And then when you start to look at where the pinches are, there's a lot of them. There's a lot of playing on the beat, and then there's a few syncopations. So we have a pinch, and then another pinch, and then 2 bass notes. And that's going to be the same up here in the 2nd measure. And you can play that with the index finger or with the ring finger, whatever feels more intuitive to you. And then we're back to the E, and then a pinch on beat 3. Oh no, beat 4. It's gonna be the same on the A. Pinch is on 1 and 2. 1 and cheapers. 1 and 2 and 3. 1 and 2 and 3. And then back to the E again. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and the index is going to reach over here to the open D string, and then you're going to go to the open E string, open G string like this. So D string to E string. And then a lot of downbeats like we talked about. So here, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and. So just using those bass notes as a point of orientation. Now here we've got a pull-off on the B minor, on the B7 sharp 9 or B minor 7 chord. Here we're pulling off to beat 2. If this is a weird move, trying to coordinate this pull off, you're holding down these fingers, you're pulling off with the pinky, which is the weakest finger, and you're trying to time the pull off for the bass note. You do not have to pull off, you can just play it. Really doesn't make any difference. The pull off is just a nuance. And as far as like a fundamental version goes, that pull-off is, God, is it the only pull-off in the whole tune? It really is more of an embellishment than something that belongs in the fundamental. So feel free not to do that pull-off. More pinches on the last line. pinch on the B and on the open B, and then beat 4. And then the bass is going to walk down, and that's the tune. So that's breaking it up into pieces, the bass and the melody. And then we have some embellishments. So let me pause here just for a second before I talk about these. And mercy, my tab is not even filling up the whole page, which is kind of a crisis. Let me see if I can fix that. That's a little better. I hate to waste valuable real estate. There we go. And that's how we make the sausage here at Fretboard Confidential. All right. Yeah, so I've highlighted the first set of embellished here. I should have called this embellished number 1 because I did do a sort of additional embellishment just to, I realized that when I recorded this song for the Parisian Blues record, I added in some walking bass and some little bass fills. And so after the embellished version, I sort of dropped those extra moves in and put those as embellished number 2, just so you can have them. Because when I just sort of sit and play the song for fun, I realized I throw those things in. And I figured as I played the intro or the outro, I'd probably end up including them, so they're included here. But let's go over these embellishments first. Mostly you can see in the first and second line, they are to provide some call and response, right? Because we've got the same phrase basically 3 times, right? We've got... Now, instead of playing in the open position, we're going to go up here. Which is using this chord voicing, which is used in the vamp, right? And these voicings, I think of as, I think I've talked about these before. I think of these as the Ed Bickert voicings. During one of my unfortunately few lessons with Emily Remler, at one point, I don't even know how it came up. She's like, oh, you know those Ed Bickert voicings? They're so cool. And I was like, I've heard them. I don't know what they are. Because they're really opaque. Like, it's just hearing them on a record, it's like hard to know what he's doing because there's no root, right? But basically, he's playing with a bass player. So like if you're in E, here's the 7th on the 5th string, and then the 3rd on the 4th string. That's like providing the foundation. That's the basic tritone of a dominant chord. And then you can put a 13 on top, and you can put a root over here. Now, once you've got that, you can do all kinds of stuff, because if you've got a root, you can turn the root into the 9th. You can turn the root into the flat 9. You can even turn it into the sharp 9. Right? Which is a little weird sounding in this context. But you can also take the 13 and make it a flat 13, which is what we're doing here. And so then on top of that, you could have a 13th, you could have a flat 13 with the root on top. You could have a flat 13 with the 9 on top, or with a flat 9 on top. That's where the sharp 9 sounds pretty good. Here's the 7th and the 3rd and the flat 13 and the sharp 9. That's pretty delicious. So, and of course these things can slide around. But the point is, before I digressed, for this embellishment right here, we're just going to use the 5th, 4th, and 3rd string. So as you're coming out of this E phrase, we're going to come in from half step below, so 4th fret, 5th fret on the 5th and 4th strings, pinch, slide up, hit the bass at the beginning of measure 4, hit the high string, hit the flat 13 and the 3rd on the middle 2 strings, So it's really just going like this. Right, so it's half stepping into the voicing, including the high string as your root instead of 5th fret on the 2nd string, and then adding in flat 13 on the 3rd string. So and then we're gonna go through this whole business, play the A chord, and then again we're back to the same kind of thing here. E, only we don't have time to go to the altered because then we need to add this bass run in from B to C, and then we're into the turnaround bit, the B section, right? So it's really just that one fill in both of these cases, only we shorten it here. And then, I guess this walk-up really should have been highlighted too. That's my bad. But when we get here, we're gonna play this 8th note run, which anticipates the C sharp in measure 11. So we play the bass on, on 1, 2, 3, and then on the and, 4, and, we've got 8th notes. So we're coming down from here. I'll take it from this point right here. So we've got 1 2, 3, and 4, and 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, and then here we're just going to do like a quarter note on the C natural to get you back up. So here we've got, and then here in measure 12, same thing, using a C to get to the C sharp, but we just play a quarter note, we don't anticipate it. So it's 2 different ways to do that approach up to the C sharp. So it's not just sitting there on an E, right, we've got. And then this is highlighted because we're just filling in the chord. Here, instead, in the fundamental version, we're just grabbing the 5th, 3rd, and high string, and here we're filling in the 9th of the chord on the 2nd string at the 3rd fret. So it's a little bar all the way across, and now your middle finger is part of the team of index, middle, and ring that's playing the top 3 strings. So the whole chord. Last line, we've got one more time through. And here, instead of just hitting the high string in measure 14, we're just going to grab index and ring here, which is what one of the exercises is pointing to. Talked about that a little bit, index and ring on the 3rd and high string. And so now instead of just sitting on B for the last bar and then the second last bar and then a walk down, in the fundamental we had a bar of B and then a walk down, but now we're going to have this little fill. And so that's like a little unison, like not unison, but like it's like the whole band is lined up. There's not like a separation between bass and melody. It's like everybody's hitting on this one rhythm. So thumb, index, and ring, and there's thumb, index, and middle, playing 5th, 3rd, and 2nd string on 1, 2, 3, 4, and is going to be C9, C9 again, down to B7. So you get the sound of the chord resolving down by a half step. You get this blues lick pentatonic melody on top. And then you get the inner voice of the 2 dominant chords on the 3rd string. Or I guess I left out the inner voice here, so just to keep things a little simpler. But you could do both. Or you could could just play the outer voices on that last one. And then there's a little bass run. So that's just blues licks in the lower register. Flat 5 to 5 over to root. This part right here. Hammer on, pull off from the 4th to the flat 5 to back. A flat 3rd, and then you're going back to the melody. So the whole last line. So that helps to kind of fill things out as far as like the bass runs and stuff. Here's the whole embellished. More or less. So, and then all these, the embellished things are like spelled out up here if you want to go back and just kind of clarify what's what. And finally, and then I saw a couple questions which I will get to. Let me just go over these. These are just 4 little embellishments that happen to connect up, getting from E up to A and then getting from A back to E on the first 2 lines, or sitting on A and then moving back, just to kind of break up the steady, 4 notes all in one chord. So here on the first E, melodies at rest, we can play a G sharp in the bass. That implies E over G sharp. Moving up to A, right? So the chord sub indicates what the bass could do. So here's a fill on the A, implying kind of a B chord, or like a bluesy lick around a B that's taking you back to E. So on the A chord, same thing on beat 4, a triplet this time, and then we're back to E. And then in the next line, we're on A. We've got 1 beat here. We aren't moving anywhere, so we're just going to play the 5th in the bass, a rocking bass to come back. So, and then the same triplet lick we had in the first line to take us back to E. So those first 2 lines sound like this. Keep going. Here's the rest. Like that. So there's all the embellished. Let me just grab this question here from, I don't think there were any other questions. Here's Jim. In the first bar, you're playing the 1 with the index and the 2 and the and with the second and ring, and then the end. I think you're talking, by 1 and 2, you're talking about the strings. Playing the first, playing the high string with the ring finger and the second string with the middle finger. And then I'm playing the 3rd string with the index finger. So on the first, oh, if you're talking about the left hand, first, yeah, index and second finger, and then Yeah. So if you're talking about the left hand, I've got my index finger grabbing the 9 on top and my middle finger grabbing the flat 7 on the second string. And then I'm coming over with my ring finger. So I've got a combination of middle finger on the second string, ring finger on the third string, left hand. Yeah, okay. So hopefully that answers that. And then I'm either doing a bar, I guess my tendency is to grab a bar here because I'm going down. If I was going up, I'd probably use my ring finger, but it's kind of interchangeable. Index seems to be my default. So yeah. So the only other thing is this vamp, which again is built out of that Ed Bickert chord. It's got a kind of funny spread, right? Because I'm trying to use the open string on top. So thumb index on the 5th and 4th string, high string played with the ring finger. So that's reaching across a few strings. You could just use 5th fret of the 2nd string, but then you're going to reach up and use ring finger to grab the 8th fret on the 2nd string. So these are just moving up like that. And then you're using the open string at the end of the measure. And then you're coming down to this shape. Here's again the bottom of the chord, and then going to grab, this is now, we're thinking about this as a B chord. So this is the 3rd and the flat 7 and the sharp 9 of a B7 chord. So that's the 2nd measure. And then the 3rd measure so I guess I wrote these as Fs. So okay, we're thinking of the F as a tritone substitution for B, then this is then F9. Yeah, okay. So that note sounds like the 9, and then that note sounds like sharp 13, I guess. Did I write it as just a 13? Boy. Oh, no, it is the 13, not sharp 13, not flat 13. So. Boy. Oh, I just wrote it as a repeating vamp the first time. That's why I'm so confused. Yeah, if you want to just sit and rock on this. Yeah, so that's the endlessly repeating one. This is the one that goes into the syncopated one that goes into the tune. So, which is the one I usually play now. Same fill as in the tune. So again, repeating vamp and then vamp with a break into the melody. So those are really all the pieces. The only other thing we have to do is talk about improvising. There's not a lot of sort of arranging stuff on this tune because it's a longer tune at 16 bars. So I tend to just play vamp, pretty straightforward when I play it myself, vamp, the tune, solo for 1 or 2 choruses, play the tune and vamp out. Not a lot of, there's no accompaniment because there's no words, and not a lot of, the vamp is kind of a composed piece of the tune. So, so we're going to get sort of back on schedule with the Redux. So we've got the tune this month, and then in September we'll do improvisation, and then we'll be done with Soulstice, and we'll start the Redux for the next tune. Paired with the next song in October. So we'll just have 2 Reduxes, 2 live streams for the Soulstice Redux. But that's everything you need to work on the tune itself. Couple of comments. Delphine. The Ed Baker voicing, sorry, did I say Ed Baker? Ed Bickert is his name. I'm really... Ed Bickert, Bickert, which is not how you pronounce it in French, I'm sure. Explanation was fascinating. We've got some time. Would it be possible to play a couple of solos, insisting on those harmonies? Yeah, I mean, so the other place that I see this mentioned, I just spent a week teaching with John Knowles, and he talks a lot about Lenny Breau, who we spent a lot of time with, and the way Lenny Breau would play these rootless. No, I think I might have said Baker. I don't remember. Lenny Breau would do this self-accompanied thing where he would use these as his comping, whether there was a bass player or not, I guess. So John Knowles would do these little exercises where like you could play. Haven't like really practiced that, but the idea just being that this would be your rhythm section. But then if you go listen to there's a great quartet record of Ed Bickert called I Wished on the Moon, and he does a blues on there. I think it's called Blues for Tommy Oki. Don't know who Tommy Oki was, but you can hear him just like sliding. Oh, full screen, yeah, sorry. You can hear him slipping and sliding all over the place. Again, this is like a really, really rough translation, but you can. The idea is basically you can sort of stick to these these middle four strings, and so if this is your one chord, then your four chord in A will look like this. Just like a typical sort of T-bone walk A9 chord, and that's your one chord. And then you can slide down. These guys are going down chromatically. There's your sixth chord, C sharp. The root would be here. Here's the flat seven. And just for an exercise, holding a common tone on top. Figuring out what to do on the third string, and then he would do these sort of ambiguous minor chords too. So like a B minor 7 could be like this with a third and with a sus4 in there, or an 11 B minor, or like this again with a sus4 in the bottom. One could also, for like a more major sounding one, could be something like this, which is the 6 and the 9 and the 5th and the root. So you get all this altered stuff that's kind of tucked in there in the middle. Or that's maybe a more likely one chord. There's the third and the 9. No, the 6. There's the 9 and there's the 5th. So once you're on these strings, you can kind of move around the melody on top. There's the major 7 on top. either the 1 or the 6 chord, minor chord. Anyway, I'm just sort of making up stuff now. But that's the loose idea, is like what's on the middle 4 strings. And then your dominant stuff looks like this on the bottom, and your major and minor stuff looks more like this. That's kind of a loose rule of thumb. John, yes, the replay is always available. Just go to the same page you're on right now on the website. The replay is always just kind of parked wherever the live stream happened. So yeah, you can watch it again. I think that is everything. If there are not any questions, we do have another live stream in half an hour talking about improvisation. But Bill Z had a question on the forum about the song that I played at Rocky Mountain Guitar Camp. A song called No Sun Above. Yes, Ed Bickert. Bickert. Ed Bickert. He passed away maybe 10 years ago. And stopped playing near the end of his life. Because there's a great jazz guitar player named Jake Langley, who lived in Austin for a little while and grew up in Toronto and actually played gigs with Ed. So when I found that out, I was just like, I was such a pain in the neck. I just wanted to ask him a million questions about Ed. But basically he said like Ed stopped playing when he felt like he couldn't play at the top of his game anymore. He was like, you know, I don't want people coming to see, they think they're coming to see the great Ed Bickert, and like, I'm not that great anymore. So he was like, that's it, I retire, which a lot of musicians never retire, so good for him. Martin, the coda. Is there a coda? I mean, the coda is basically the vamp again. Unless there's some performance or something that I'm forgetting about where something else happens. But mostly, and you think any other time I've played it, I've always just played the vamp at the end. So it's the vamp to come in and the vamp to go out. So same both ways. But if I'm mistaken, do please let me know right now, and I'll try to figure out what that is. Yeah, so I played this song last week in the faculty concert at Rocky Mountain Guitar Camp called No Sun Above, which I think there's a clip of. I mean, so Josh B posted it on our forum. I think there's versions of me playing it at the New World Deli that Chris Green's posted on YouTube, and of course I recorded it, so it's the Bandcamp version is on my Bandcamp page, whatever. It's called No Sun Above, and so it's an E minor, so I guess it's got some similarities, but it's more of an alternating thumb thing. This is really related more to the YouTube lesson I did recently on funkier Travis picking, or I forget what I called it, but it's the idea of like you're taking this alternating thumb and you're actually turning it into more of like a 2-beat feel. Going 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. And what the thumb is doing in between is playing ghost notes on the 4th string. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. And in this case, going between, I mean, you can think of this a couple different ways. I'm mostly really just thinking of this as an E chord. And then there's this little riff going up. So it's double stops in a very similar vein to, except it's going up with a minor chord. And you put those two things together. So it's lot of syncopation. And then just trying to get some little bass notes in there. And you can solo over that too. And there the trick is just to kind of have a light touch with the thumb and then try to get the single note stuff to sound as much like someone playing single note blues licks over a rhythm section so that it's got some of that vibrato and that single note articulation. So that's sort of that's kind of the parlor trick that song is. So, all right. Well, it's 2 o'clock and I have half an hour to fire up the air conditioning and try to cool this room off before we do this again. So I hope that gives everybody a good overview of Soulstice, and you can go look at the original short videos too if you want to see the exercises and see the different elements isolated. And then, here you can look at all the the breakout of the bass and the melody and how to line that stuff up and the embellishments and all that. Yeah, yes, Bill, everything in the first 5 frets. So much music to be found at the first 5 frets. No real reason to wander out of them as far as I'm concerned. It's just more of the same further up the neck. Anyway, that's my smarty pants thought on all that. All right, thanks everybody, and thanks for letting me know about the blurry. Hopefully that remains resolved.